But are religions relevant today?
In the 17th and 18th centuries, in a period known as the Enlightenment in Europe, science, reason, and humanism came together, freeing us to a great degree from ignorance, our own worst passions, and the stranglehold of religion. Immanuel Kant summed up the era's motto as "Dare to know." After millennia, Socrates' sacrifice appeared to be bearing fruit. Reason helped to question and overcome custom and established practices. Science made us understand the world more reliably, and humanism established tolerance and an equitable order as the desired goals. Great gains were made as a result of this, but it has only brought us thus far. We do have a new paradigm, but are still riddled with the same problems, which have now mutated into newer, more resistant forms that just refuse to go away. It is significant that the Enlightenment, which also came to be known as the Age of Reason because of its rationalism and physical materialism, was followed for almost the next 100 years as a reaction to it by the intellectual and artistic movement known as Romanticism, which emphasized the personal, emotional, and spontaneous, the subjective, the irrational, the imaginative, and the transcendental. So, what is needed perhaps is an approach that incorporates all of our divergent needs and characteristics. We, in our time, think that we have understood human life in all its individual and collective forms and have, on that basis, devised theories, written manifestos, and framed ideologies. We have structured our societies and laid down codes of conduct. We have drawn borders even as we break down some barriers. We continue to create identities which include some people and exclude others as we regulate life, of which we do not know the vital parts. We do this with authority and confidence that does not recognize the limits of our knowledge and understanding and belies our true condition on what a famous astronomer called a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. We proclaim the writ of man far and wide in an effort to gain control of and exercise power over that which we have not created. Our founding fathers have drafted constitutions and legislated laws that define our rights and obligations and bind us to that in which we have no choice. Some of us want to make these our sacred books. But if these really encompassed all of life and its situations, religions would not exist. Religious texts too are human constructs, not divine, though they are deeply inspired and poetic. They acknowledge and include a bigger dimension, namely nature, creation, or God, whatever we want to call it. And because of that engagement with a larger truth, they may serve and guide us better in certain situations. That is why people continue to follow them. Like all knowledge, these texts too acquire meaning from the context within which they are placed. If we are to use their wisdom, they have to be understood in relation to our lives and our world today. But sacredness is another name for fixedness, which is the hallmark of faith and belief because they invariably resist change. Nevertheless, the difficulty of constructively reinterpreting these texts and extracting valuable insights from them for everyone to use in an open atmosphere should be dealt with instead of casting them away. The misuse of religion, I think, is also and perhaps largely made possible by the fault lines of other structures that we have created in our world. If our social, political, and legal institutions inspired faith and functioned to ensure a truly harmonious, just, and equitable world for all, religions would be an added asset and not a problem. Their power would be used as a constructive tool for the betterment of all and not unleashed as one of self-destruction that can spread quickly like a wildfire. So the responsibility lies as much in the secular space, I believe, as it does in the religious sphere. It is true that a significant number of religions, including some of the major ones around the world, have been hijacked from within those traditions by a minuscule but vocal, aggressive, and sometimes violent minority, which is able to spread fear and insecurity, even cause disruption and real damage because it is often supported by rigid priestly structures, passionate ideologues, and small interest groups of not just politicians, but also ambitious and opportunistic individuals from all walks of life, wanting to assume positions of power and influence. This has made the vast majority even more silent, ceding greater space to those who want to impose their interpretations and their will, even in matters of faith and belief. And in the absence of true and wise leadership, instead of imbibing the essence of their religion and being guided by it in their conduct and human relations, most people only uphold traditions and follow religious practices as an expression of their faith while holding tight to their singular identities. If the founders of these traditions were to return, they would barely recognize their own thought in what has been made of it. In such an environment, tapping into the creativity of religion is becoming increasingly difficult. So it becomes all the more necessary to not let our horizons shrink and to live with deeper reflection and greater imagination, such that truth and beauty, whatever their source, guide us, remaining ever present in our lives.